Meeting is called to order at 7:02. Please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
We need an approval for the open session minutes of January 7, 2019. Correct your agenda. Is there a motion for the approval of those?
Motion to approve the open session minutes of January 7th, 2018.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the minutes? I forwarded some edits to Kelly earlier. Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, the minutes are approved. Student comments. Is Lily with us? Oh, hi, Lily.
Hi. On Wednesday last week, NIMUC hosted its 7th 21st Century Learning Conference, which was focused on the district's mission, empowering all learners to thrive. There were over 100 sessions provided to students during the day, and each of the sessions were aligned with different parts of the portrait of the graduate. I happened to participate in 4 of the sessions, which happened to be financial literacy, leveling on my presentations, an upcoming trip to China in 2020, and a Model United Nations simulation with students from Nickel College. I like personally Model UN a lot, and it was based around an alien invasion, and I thought it was a great way to engage with the students and form alliances with others and come up with a solution. What I took away was that it was also interesting to learn about finance, and I was able to vastly improve my public presentation skills. And I think it's just a good way to immerse myself in different areas of interest during the school day instead of attending traditional classes. During one of these sessions, a group of students constructed an ice rink in the courtyard of the school for a community skating event. And the group not only built the rink, but created details and an advertising plan for some community skating events. We'll be looking to host our first community skate on February 9, 2019. It'll be open to public, with hot chocolate, snacks, games, and available for families and community members. And on February 6th, we will host the National Signing Day ceremony. On this day, 9 students will commit to continue their athletic career at a college or university, and these students include Jackson Buchanan, soccer, St. Anselm College, Colby Higgerty, soccer, Northeastern University, Matt Richards, football, Bentley University, or UMass Amherst, Tom Chester's, football at Sal Regina College, Samantha Kilcoyne, swimming at Williams College, Lila Dunster, diving, University of Rhode Island, Valerie Sirocco, softball, Assumption College, Jacob Beater, baseball at Nichols College, and Jordan Utter, lacrosse at Framingham State University. On the ceremony, they will have the chance to sign their formal letter of intent while celebrating with family, coaches, teammates, and friends. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lily. Okay. Community comments. Is there a member of the public who wishes to be heard at this point? Okay, seeing none, let us move on to superintendent's comments.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Well, Lily did such a fabulous job in talking about the 21st Century Learning Conference. There really isn't much for me to do other than show some pretty pictures up on the screen. No, like she said, it really is a tremendous event, and it's actually hard to believe that this is the 7th one that we've done. So correct me if I'm wrong, John and Mary Ann. This is the 4th school year that we've done this. You know, and I'd like to take the time to publicly commend John and Mary Ann, along with the entire NIMUC staff, also Leanne Ramsey, who is our career and community coordinator, for just the tremendous effort in coordinating all of this for our students, for tying it this time around very explicitly to our brand new mission around all learners thriving, specifically the 6 Portrait of a Graduate competencies. So like Lily talked about, there was just an incredibly diverse array of sessions. Things, she discussed the ice rink, and I think we had about between 15 and 20 students involved in that in a day-long process. But realized we also had other sessions around things like Italian cooking, around pottery, around basic changing tires and auto maintenance. As you can see, this young lady, crepe making, the artistry of henna, blackout poetry, and so on. So a lot of great partnerships internally within our school community, but also with the larger community as well. So terrific work. Second piece that I have is just as an update for your purposes. During our half PD day or the release day, we commenced in earnest with ALICE training, or intruder active shooter training for our professional staff. We're really, really pleased with the partnerships that we have with both the Mendon and the Upton Police. As I said in the background notes, for our Clough and Misco staffs, our new school resource officer at Mendon, Steve Senko, really did a terrific job in coordinating all of it and really organizing the half day. He worked in conjunction with 3 other police departments and 5 other officers, some of which are SROs themselves, to actually conduct drills. And the same parallel process was done at Memorial with our Upton Police. I think, I shared with you the slides, the PowerPoint, the theoretical rationale. But I think the real powerful piece is actually working on the scenarios and the actual drills with our professional staff. I had the opportunity to really be very actively involved in the drills that took place at Memorial. So as I say, this is just kind of the first step. Like anything, just like a fire drill, the key is practice, practice, practice. Our intent is to continue these practices, but as the year progresses, but to also involve students in them as well. Okay. Next piece of business, you do have in your packets, we usually receive right towards the end of December our latest NESDEC enrollment reports for the regional district, but also individually each community. This is the first time on my watch where they are not indicating an actual decline in enrollment. They're actually indicating a kind of a leveling at a couple places where there actually might be a peak in enrollment within the next 5 years. I think I indicated that we've had a peak in births in the 2 towns from 15 to 16, where it actually increased by approximately 20 students from 15 to 16. So we'll see an impact there in 2021. I generally have found that the NESDEC enrollments are kind of on the conservative side. As we know, in the last 2 school years, we've had an increase in enrollment of about 70 students. And I think a lot of that speaks to mobility, but also the rate of matriculation from 8th grade to NITMUC. So something just to be cognizant of. And then last but not least, you do have in your packet the most current year-to-date expenditure report for this current FY19 budget. Jay, is there anything in specific as far as any line items that you'd like to highlight?
Not specific line items. Maintenance issues continue to challenge us this year. I believe I talked a little bit last time about the issues we had with the Misco boiler. We've got to repair one of them that hasn't been working all year, and it's probably to the tune of about $60,000 or $70,000 to fix it. We've got an air exchange unit that does the heat for the gymnasium at Memorial School. that's been out, and that's going to require a crane to come in to fix it because we've got to remove it and replace it. So that's probably going to be about $5,000 or $6,000 when it's all said and done. It just seems like we continue to have things that are breaking down in all 4 buildings. Today, at this building here, one of the boilers developed some cracks in the big tube that like the water goes through. Something that's happened in the past, we fix it, and it's not super expensive, but we had one boiler that we fixed today. We've got another one on the other boiler that's going to have to get fixed later in the week. So we just continue to have some of these challenges. Budget-wise, though, the line items are pretty much in decent shape. Supply orders are in good shape. So hopefully we can get through it. And as I need to do every time I'm here, snow and ice is still good right now.
Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
And that's what I have.
Okay. All right, next we have subcommittee updates, so we'll move it over to Diane and the Golden Apple Award Subcommittee's presentation.
Thanks, Mike. So before we award our Golden Apple winner, I want to do the business part. We met last Wednesday?
Yes.
Last Wednesday, to do our deliberation, but we also brought up kind of a talking point or discussion point on how we've done the Golden Apple in the past and whether we want to kind of change the procedures. And I think unanimously we all agreed that it would be a nice opportunity to be able to give 3 Golden Apples during the year. And the way in which we'd like to do this is instead of having 2 nomination periods, one kind of that fall, beginning of the winter, and then the second one spring, going towards the summer, we would just have 1 nomination period at the end of the year, probably in May. But we would take everybody's nominations and submissions and consider everything and walk away with 3 Golden Apple winners. So it would give us the opportunity to award 1 more person. I think every nomination period we deliberate and we come up with the person who's chosen, and we always have that feeling of angst, like, it would be so nice if we could give another one. Because some people are nominated multiple times during multiple periods. So that was a decision that we made at the last subcommittee meeting, that moving forward we will do 3 winners following a year-long submission period. So just wanted to get through that business before we get to the fun stuff, which is the awarding of the current Golden Apple. So my favorite part, everybody always knows this, I love being able to acknowledge the good, but even more so than being able to acknowledge the good is sitting down and reading all of the nominations that parents write about the teachers in this district. And Dr. M often will highlight some of the practices, fun, creative, innovative things that are going on in the school. And we're fortunate to have such talented administrators who are supporting our teachers in doing all of this great work. But way back when, we wanted to do a little bit more and acknowledge an individual, and really to just give our parents an opportunity to share their experiences that their kids have had in classrooms, outside of classrooms. The gist of this award is it does not have to necessarily be an educator. It's anyone across the MRSD, so any staff member in the MRSD. And we have had nominations in all different areas and positions, administratively, teachers, support staff, all the way across. So our program, the Golden Apple, began in 2015-16. And as I just said, the winners are nominated by parents who tell us their stories. So I always like to take this opportunity to say thank you to parents because our nomination papers are a little bit lengthy. We ask quite a few questions, and we ask not for 2 sentences. We're really looking for really concrete stories, so it makes it easier for us to kind of weigh different nominations against each other. So thanks to all the parents who take the time to nominate our different staff members in the district. And I also think that in all of our nomination periods, Joe can back me up on this, we probably rarely had a time when there were less than 30, which I think is pretty impressive in order. So thanks for sharing your stories. We love reading them, and it's great. And then I also love to thank all of our staff members across the Mersey because, yeah, we don't have a lot of golden apples to give. And there are so many people who are mentioned nomination period after nomination period that we wish we could acknowledge everyone. But I guess the thing that I walk away with personally is that we've got a lot of great people in our district doing a lot of great work, working hard, coming in every single day and giving their best to this job. So I really like it. I literally leave every deliberation period going, oh, like I just want to tell everybody. But anyways, so this is kind of a blanket thank you to everybody. And sometimes when we go from nomination to nomination period, a name keeps coming up over and over. They may not get 3 or 4 or 5 nominations every period. They may only get 1, sometimes 2, but consistently we're seeing this name repeating. And the names change, the faces of the kids change, but the stories are kind of always the same and all very positive. So this time around, that ended up being kind of the direction that we went in for this Golden Apple Award winner because there was a trend. We kept seeing this name coming up again and again. So we saw this as testament to the fact that not only is she making an impact in this particular period, it's been going on for a long time. And if we had had the Golden Apple 10 years ago, we probably would have been seeing this individual's name then too. So it just kind of is testament to the fact that she's committed to students, committed to parents, committed to the district, has kept her spark for educating and our district alive, and very, very impressive in my opinion. So I've been a part of the district for 14 years, and even though my children did not have this person as their teacher, this person's name keeps coming up again and again in hallways, on soccer fields, everywhere I go I keep hearing about this person. It always makes me smile to hear of an educator that has been that impactful in our district. So before naming who this person is and giving her an opportunity to kind of hear the words of her students' parents, I'd like to just kind of take a moment and read some of the anecdotals that they provided for us. And bear with me because when somebody has been nominated as many times as this person has, we have a lot of material to work with. So it was great. So bear with me. Okay. This teacher inspired both my children to learn by using real-life examples and hands-on opportunities. She strives to bring out the very best in every child by helping them to see what is unique and special about each of them. She has a unique plan for each child and has a way of helping kids to see where they excel and where they can improve, all the while making them feel good about themselves. I love how empathetic she is, and this comes out in her teaching style. She is committed to all aspects of students' growth and character. She uses innovative teaching so that no child is left behind in her classroom. She's concerned about the holistic health and well-being and how this will in turn help with a child's learning. This educator realizes that some learning is fraught with roadblocks and material that just does not seem to make sense to students. Thus, she allows students to take breaks and allows other students to tutor their peers if needed. The tutoring helps both students, one to learn in a different manner and the other to grow in confidence. According to my daughter, this is why her class is so much fun, so stimulating, and filled with learning. She exudes enthusiasm. She is determined that her students will leave her class understanding the math, not just knowing what the correct answers are. She teaches math using hands-on equations, math in 3 acts, and innovative math games. Her Twitter is full of elementary math chats with like-minded educators. She started a pen pal partnership with students in Texas impacted by the hurricane. Our students got to talk to students from other states and see how they were impacted by the floods. I like that she included my son in his parent-teacher meeting. My son got to take on a voice in what he thought he was doing well and the things that he could improve on. When he left the conference, he was beaming because he felt very smart, very important, and understood. I think that's what my son needed, and I'm glad that she brings it out in him. My son has blossomed under this teacher. He went from a shy kid, apprehensive to participate, to a boy who volunteers and will always tell us what is going on in school. If I knew what this teacher did to turn my son around, I would bottle it and sell it to every parent. She has inspired the 4th grade team and other staff members to use Twitter as a resource for communication, connection, and engagement. In addition to her classroom Twitter, she uses a variety of websites such as Seesaw, wherein students can download pictures of their work and record their thinking. This has encouraged homeschool connection for parents or guardians to comment on their child's post and feel like a part of their education. I have seen students' fluencies flourish as they recorded their books and listened to their audios. I have seen improved work ethic and grit in all of the children. The kids work hard because they are assigned meaningful activities. She teaches them that making mistakes is an avenue to improve their learning. This teacher was inspired by the district's initiative and started a no homework policy. Without the task of homework each night, she discovered students were choosing to read for pleasure and solve real-life math problems when they went home. And the sense of relief that parents felt with no more homework battles was shared multiple times. She fostered a true love of learning. So this is my favorite. This teacher is a cheerleader for everyone. My son said she would do the floss dance when students learned a new math concept. She keeps math fun with games and hands-on learning. She cries when she reads Charlotte's Web every year. Why can't every teacher be this awesome? So, after 24 years here in the Mersey, our recipient of the Winter 2019 Golden Apple Award is very well known throughout Mendon and Upton, as she has touched the lives of so many students, families, and fellow educators. She taught 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. She served as a math coach. I'm sure I'm missing some other things. Oh, 2nd grade as well. And last but certainly not least notable, she is a complete Harry Potter nut in a very good way, and she incorporates elements of the stories into many of her lessons, knowing how much more engaging and fun they will make learning for her students. Please join me in applause as we award Mrs. Marie Brigham, 4th grade teacher at Clough Elementary School, this first Golden Apple Award of 2019. Congratulations.
She's trying to do pictures too.
Can you see them?
Yep.
Can I say a few things?
Yeah, you can.
Come on.
Is that a thing?
Sure,
What do you think?
sure.
Just a few notes, and I know there are some other important agenda items tonight, so I won't take too long, but I wanted to explain how it is that I got to be here tonight. First of all, I'm really humbled that any family would take the time to write about the year their child spent with me. Sorry. I know how busy family life is, and that is just, it's very humbling. And then just to make it a little lighter, to go a little Bill Belichick on you. Really, there are 3 phases of the game for me, and it's all about those 3 phases of the game. It's the relationship that you forge with the student and with their family. And so it's teacher, parent, and student. And here in Mendon Upton, I've been blessed to work with some extraordinary students, and they're really special parents. So I'm really fortunate in that way. And then on the bigger scale, for me, there's like a more personal 3 phases of the game, and that's working with administrators, with my colleagues, and with my family, having them support me. So here at Mendon Upton, I've worked for some really awesome administrators that strike just the right balance, and they know how to push and challenge their teachers, and then they also know when it's appropriate to step back and let us do our thing and to trust us. And I've been able to take some great risks because of the administrators that I've worked for. I work with the most awesome team of teachers. So I want to just mention them by name. I've worked for a period of time with my co-teacher, Tricia Chapman, and she has taught me how to reach all students in ways that I'm not capable of reaching them on my own. I work with my colleague who's here tonight, Linda Cody, and I'm going on 30 years of working with Kristen Bertheo. We met freshman year and did our student teaching together too. So that's a relationship, and these women push me to think deeply about my teaching, to be reflective, and they challenge me. And I would not be, I just wouldn't be the teacher that I am if it weren't for them. So I'm deeply appreciative of them. And my family, so I've got my mom here tonight, and such sacrifices she made to make sure that we had a good education. She and my dad modeled what good work ethic looks like. And then also with my mom behind her is my Aunt Pat, who is a 39-year veteran of the Shrewsbury Public School District, and she really taught me what it meant to be like a professional in this field. She was also an association president, and just really taught me about professionalism, working hard, and staying ignited with passion. And then my family, I've got two really amazing kids that inspire me every day, challenge me in all kinds of ways. And an awesome husband who's the glue to our family when I'm running hard. You know, he's just the one that holds it all together. And I just want to, thank the school committee, because really, without the work that you do, and I know it's not always super exciting, we couldn't do what we do in the classroom. So I know that whether it be like overrides or figuring out how to make a budget work, all of that supports us and lifts us up, and we're very thankful that we've had people who are willing to run and give so much time every year. So we're appreciating. I'm really appreciating you tonight as well. So thank you. That's all.
Thanks.
If I could be like, if you ever watched back in the day American Idol, and at the end of the last episode, Simon Cowell would always say, "America, you got it right." I have to say, school committee, you beyond got it right. As I said in the background notes, I cannot think of a more worthy recipient of this award than Marie. I can honestly say in 29 years in this business, I've never worked with a better teacher than Marie. She is the epitome of everything that we would ever want out of an educator, as far as heart, passion, and a commitment to always get better. So congratulations, Marie, and job well done, school committee.
Okay, move on to the budget subcommittee and the presentation of the first pass of MERSD fiscal year 2020 operational budget.
Okay. All right, now's the fun part of this meeting, right? Okay. So this is very, very early on in the process, but as we do every time of this year, usually right after we get the first budget from the state, the House 1 budget or the governor's budget, we do a first pass based upon what we've put together in budget subcommittee, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what we're looking at on both the revenue and the expenditure side, and talk about the things that still need to be resolved. As we do every year with the budget subcommittee, we have 3 goals for the budget this year, and very deliberately, they're very closely tied to our new strategic plan. So first and foremost, it's really about providing not only the academic, but also the social emotional services that all of our students need to thrive. Again, hitting upon our brand new mission. To really, again, as we've seen so many pieces before of evidence, most notably what we just did last Wednesday with the 21st Century Learning Conference, what type of programs, what type of services do our kids need to meet those 6 Portrait of a Graduate Competencies. And then, as always, I call this every single year the perpetual goal. What are we doing to maximize efficiencies and always pursue cost savings, knowing that we have a limited amount of resources in our communities? So, again, I think in thinking about what we've done with our brand new strategic plan, but also in building a budget that supports that plan, you really start at the beginning. You start with your beliefs about learning. What are your core values as a learning community? And we have 5 of them. I think they're right on point. I think they're very succinct. But the first one is being about establishing relationships so that we have a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment in our 4 schools. What type of learning opportunities do we want for kids? We want ones that are deep, that really kind of speak to their passions, that speak to nurturing curiosity. We also want our students to be active and creative and purposeful. We think about that meaningful hands-on learning. Along the same lines, we want our students to have connections with the community and to have authentic experiences, things that have meaning and relevance rather than just an academic exercise in the classroom. And then last but not least, it's a partnership. It's a partnership with our families, it's a partnership with our community, and having that collaboration is extremely important. We believe that these 5 core beliefs need to be in place so all of our kids learn powerfully and deeply. I feel very, very strongly and very proud to be superintendent of this district because I feel like we're living those beliefs. I think it's an ongoing process and it's something that evolves, but there's many aspects of it where the district is really having unprecedented success. You know, for example, just a few bullet points. Our focus on social emotional learning. You know, I know earlier in the year, both Jan and Deb presented on the work that they're doing in their school communities around a PBIS program. Okay, that really gets to the heart of social emotional learning. We've done a lot of work within this district with regard to project-based learning. Okay, our Golden Apple Award winner, Marie, has been a part of a team that's been working with the Buck Institute to really push their practices in designing more project-based learning. And that's happening at all of our levels. Something that we're very proud of is being one of 7 districts across the country being awarded as a U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon District, okay, which really kind of speaks to our commitment to sustainability as far as that efficiency and cost savings piece, but also teaching that to our children. Again, the ongoing work around the inclusion model, not pulling out our kids with mild and moderate disabilities, but servicing them in the classroom, is a clear financial commitment by this district. That work has been going on for years. And as I said, unprecedented success. You know, things like a couple school committee meetings ago, we learned about the College Board naming Nipmuc for the 2nd time in 7 years as a national AP honor roll school, and the same thing for our district. The fact that every year we're named as at least a silver medalist in the U.S. News and World Report for the best high schools across America. The unprecedented success that we've had even in our athletics program, the number of tournaments that we qualify for, the number of regional and state championships, and so on. So a lot of super, super positive things happening in our district, and it directly speaks to those 5 core beliefs about learning and what all of our kids need to be successful. So as we do every year, I think you've got to look at where we are statistically, some of our basic demographics. So the first place you look at is our official October 1st enrollment numbers. This year we are approximately 40 higher than we were last year, October 1st, 2017, with a total district population of 2,333. We're going to see probably in all likelihood, and again I'm going by NESDEC, but I'm also looking at some real numbers, something in the ballpark of probably about 30 to 40 fewer students at this juncture for next year, for our October 1st numbers. Our real big inflection point is going to be at MISCO, and it's real simple math. We have 200 eighth graders this year, and if you look at our fourth grade population, both at Clough and Memorial, we have a total of 161. So you've got a delta there of approximately 40. If we have the trend continue with NIPMUC, where about 80 to 85% of the 8th grade is matriculating to the 9th grade, NIPMUC will actually see a slight increase. And then I think our big wild card is going to be both Clough and Memorial with regard to kindergarten enrollment. I've had some preliminary talks with both Jan and Deb. For this juncture, they seem to be relatively healthy. But again, we're looking at our live birth rate for the kiddos that were born in 2014 to ascertain what's going to happen there. As we do every year, just as I would mention, we look at our population, not including choice, to ascertain the breakdown of student population and therefore the assessment to each community. I think for 3 years that's been almost virtually unchanged. It's literally changed by something like 3/100ths of a percentage point. So we've been in a very good place, particularly since the override, as far as our average class sizes. You can see them there. At both Clough and Memorial, you're in the ballpark of 20 to 21 students. There are some variations. I know there's a couple concerns at a couple grade levels where it's pushing 25, 26, but realize they are balanced by a couple grade levels where it's 18. But overall, we've had relatively reasonable class sizes. NIPMUC has had a little increase within the last couple of years, obviously because some of our increase in student population. So what you have, what the budget subcommittee has in front of them right now is something that's based upon strictly expenditures. And I've got a lot more to say about this and a lot more possibilities. But at this early point in this process, we have a $37,273,111 budget that is a fairly significant increase. It's a 5.43% increase, or roughly $1.9 million from this current fiscal year, and it's strictly expenditure based. What it does is it maintains level services, and by level services it means keeping the same program and staff in place for what we need. And then there's some real targeted needs that we've also added to this, which we'll talk about in a minute. It will maintain our class sizes, and really, as you'll see by the targeted investments, really focuses on the social emotional piece that we talked about. So I will cover the expenditure side, what's driving this increase, and then talk a little bit about the revenue piece. So our salary increases. So next year is the third year of most of our contracts with all of our associations. All of our associations, except one, are receiving a 2.25% cost of living adjustment. So when you take that into consideration for all of our employees, and you also include steps and lanes, right now we're looking at an increase of about $644,000, which translates to a 3.26% increase in our overall salary line. Our second biggest driver, as always, is going to be health insurance. We still don't have resolution on that. We're still working with our agent. We've basically been told that our worst case scenario is a 5% increase. We feel relatively confident we can do better than that based upon our utilization rate at this juncture. But right now, as we typically do, we have a conservative number in there, so we've got a 5% increase, 8% for retirees, which translates to the line items to being about a $360,000 increase. Something that we do know that is beyond our control, and it's been very high, is about an 11.7% increase in the Worcester County retirement assessment. Those are for all of our employees that are not part of the Massachusetts teacher retirement system. So kind of interesting, this is now the third consecutive year where we've had at least a 10% hit on that assessment. So that's pretty sizable. It's almost $83,000. Next year is also our third year of our 3-year contract with Telstone and Son. So keeping our transportation services that we have now in place is about a 5% increase, which translates to about $80,000, $81,000. And then a very, very sizable increase in special ed transportation, about 17.23%. Very, very high. It's probably the best that we can do, given the various carriers that are out there, but in conversation with the carriers, the stresses regarding things like minimum wage going up on January 1st, some of the needs of our students where you're not only paying for transportation and for a bus, but in some cases also an aid during the transportation process and so on. So that's a fairly significant hit. Kind of aligned with that in student services is a couple additional out-of-district placements, which kind of accounts for that nearly 11% increase in out-of-district tuitions of about $169,000. And then we've intentionally gone conservative in looking at what we will have to pay for any students who elect for Norfolk Aggie. We have approximately 5 coming off the books for graduation for Norfolk Aggie or Tri-County, but we won't have a definitive idea until, I believe it's April 1st, Jay, as far as a deadline for those students applying to those schools. And again, as a regional school district, we have to assume those tuitions for those students. And for Norfolk Aggie, it's fairly expensive. It's in the ballpark of about $26,000 per student. Then the topic that Jay loves to talk about during his piece, maintenance. We still have some concerns, but a lot of this is really that proactive maintenance that needs to be done, particularly around the boilers and the control systems at all 4 buildings. So we've got an increase of about $62,000, plus also some estimates that we're getting on heating oil. Technology, you'll find, is completely level funded. I think the net increase is something like $200. But it's essentially a continuation of our major expenses there are a continuation of the leases for our smart boards at the elementary and middle school levels, and then also the continuation of the lease of our desktops and laptops. So as far as targeted needs, we are looking at 4 positions that we would like to add to this to be included in the FY20 budget, and we feel that they are super critical. First off is 2 district-wide school psychologists. Okay, and the vision would be somebody who would be servicing the 2 schools in Mendon, somebody who would be servicing the 2 schools in Upton. We've budgeted about $80,000 for each position. As you can see there, it would be a net increase of $60,000 because at this juncture, we have a $100,000 line for purchase services. So somebody who comes in, does psychological testing for the special ed process, or might have to do observations and so on. The feeling is, why not have somebody who's a district employee, who's here full-time? They would continue to do those testing pieces, but also would be providing services to students. We also are looking at to kind of shuffle things a little bit with regard to how we work team chairs. Right now we have a structure where we have 2 full-time team chairs. We actually have 3, but one is also serving as the early childhood coordinator, and it's kind of splitting her time between the 2 elementary schools. The vision would be to have 2 individuals who are a team chair at each elementary school, but they would also be serving in a dean of students capacity. I know firsthand the challenges that we're seeing, and we've talked about this at the school committee level, at each of our elementary schools, and particularly things around SEL topics and students with some real significant challenges. The vision would be that this is somebody who would be working directly with students, but also would be helping out our 2 principals at the elementary level in meeting these new and varied needs. With that in mind, though, in looking at some of our enrollment shifts, we also probably, in all likelihood, would be looking at a reduction of 2 FTEs, one at the middle school and one at the elementary level as well. So, you have in front of you a document that has all of the demographic information, but also kind of a summary of the overall expenditures. If you look on page 1, as a matter of fact, the inside cover, you see all of these state codes summed up is right now at this early process an increase of 5.43% or 1.9 million. So here is the truly challenging part of this is right now what we're looking at as far as revenue. I can honestly say in 8 years as superintendent, I've never seen a worse state budget come out for our regional school district. So true to form, as we've gotten in the last 5 years of this administration, our Chapter 70 amount has been the hold harmless amount, the amount of $20 per student. So that comes out to be a $44,000 increase. This year, because regional transportation was level funded, we actually saw a decrease. By level funded, it is not applying the same percentage, rather just the same pool of money. So we're actually down $46,012 in the regional transportation. got a whopping $1,200 to help compensate for the 7 students that attend charter schools. So we actually have less right now in the House 1 budget in state aid for FY20 than we do for this current fiscal year. That's not good. So as a result, this is a similar conversation that we've had in years. The burden for funding this falls to our 2 communities. So I should note, and I'm going to say a little bit more about this in a minute, that the minimum local contribution to, oh, darn it, sorry. Just fix this. The minimum local contribution to Mendon, that is what the state says that each community should contribute according to the Chapter 70 formula, the minimum local contribution to Mendon increase is by $502,751. To Upton, it increases by $604,348. Okay? So pretty significant increases, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics behind that in a minute. To me, what we have for our expenditures, we would need an additional $928,687 from Mendon and an additional $1.1 million, $1,127,665 from Upton. So the total local assessment is a little more than $2 million. Again, based upon where we are with regard to expenditures. Third category right now is district receipts. Essentially, it's status quo with the exception of the amount that we're allocating out of E&D or excess and deficiency. It's about $100,000 less. This current fiscal year, we're allocating $400,000. We're projecting $300,000 for the simple reason that some of the capital projects that we did over the summer, we used some of those fundings, but realize the state is a little bit behind and we don't have our E&D for FY19 certified yet. So again, at this early point in the process, we're acting very conservatively. So looking at that, this is basically the funding sheet that you have in your handout. This is on page 2 and 3. Kind of shows how it would break down within, actually it would exceed the 2.5 levy limit because for Mendon you'd be looking at a 10.1% increase in assessment, and for Upton your operational assessment would also be a 10.1% increase. So again, the burden would fall to our 2 local communities to fund a 5.43% increase. So I would like to pose another model and kind of just for your ideas, for your thinking, to say, well, what if we put forward a budget that's based upon just the minimum local contribution increase? What we would be looking at, and again, this is not exact, but it's in the ballpark, we'd be going from a budget that increases by 5.43% to a budget that's an increase of 2.5%. And again, carrying forward the minimum local contribution and then factoring out operational additional, you'd be looking at an increase in assessment to Mendon of $491,715, or a 5.36% increase, and an increase to Upton of $578,912, which is about a 5.2% increase. I think there's something to be said again about that minimum local contribution and what happens over time if a community doesn't keep up with that MLC, with that minimum local contribution. And again, I usually talk about this, but this is really important, and this is super salient to our two communities. And again, just to do the quick math lesson here, target share is part of the tweaking of the funding formula in 2007, okay? And essentially, if I had to define it, it basically says, this is the percentage that you should be paying towards public education for all the children that opt for public schools in your communities. Okay, and again, for Mendon and Upton, it's essentially 3 pools. Mendon Upton Regional School District, BVT, and a real small chunk is Norfolk Aggie. Okay, those are your 3 sources. So again, it's a percentage, and the percentage, they calibrate every year, and they look at 2 things. Together they call it municipal revenue growth factor, but they look at every year, what are your aggregate property values and what are your aggregate personal income levels based upon the taxes collected, okay? So realize, overall, if you take all 351 communities, they work it out so that 59% of communities, overall, the 351 total, state aid should only cover about 41%. And communities in whole should be covering about 59%. That's when looking at the entire state. But there's variations. Okay, so a lot of communities, over 1/3, are at the cap, where they should be contributing 82.5% of the foundation budget. And then the poorest community in the state statistically is still Lawrence, and they're on the hook for 14%. So I always show this so you kind of have a benchmark in your head of all of our neighboring communities of what their target share is. Okay, so when the governor's budget comes out, always the last Wednesday of January, they always put all this statistical information. So you can see we only have one neighbor that's at the cap, Hopkinton, is at 82.5, but you've got, Westboro banging on the door, and you can see Grafton, 68.47, but when you compare where we are, we're now 2 communities that are pushing upwards of about 75%. Okay? So one thing that is a little bit challenging is it is a little bit of a moving target because they recalibrate target share each and every single year. To put things in perspective, my first budget that I did in 2012, I think both of our communities were at like 62, 63%. So it's moved, but you could also say the relative wealth of the communities has also changed as well. So here's kind of the bad news. The bad news is we're still 2 communities that are below target share. Okay, last year when I gave this presentation, there were 79 communities that were below target share. Now there's only 57 communities that are below target share. That translates to about 15% of the state is below target share. So as a general rule of thumb, what they do is if you are below target share by a factor of between 2 and 6%, they tack on an additional percent to your minimum local contribution. They're basically saying, hey town, hey city, you need to step up and provide a little bit more. If you're above 6% away, and I think there's only like 4 communities, they actually tack on 2%. So I bring up all these points because this kind of speaks to those large increases, I'll go back a few slides, in minimal local contribution. Okay, so Mendon is being asked to pony up an additional 7.47%, or 502,000, and Upton is being asked to pony up an additional 604, which again is about 7.5%. Okay, so again, that kind of speaks to that whole target share discussion. So at this point, there's a gap, and that probably shouldn't be a newsflash to most of you. Usually during the first pass of the budget, there usually is a gap. But right now, there's a gap of a little bit over $1 million. If you were to take the two models that I've presented, a budget that is strictly based upon expenditures, which clearly would warrant an override for both communities, and the MLC, or minimum local contribution model, that's the gap that exists. But again, at this point, there are still variables on both revenue and expenditures. Large one being healthcare insurance renewal. Okay, that's enormous. This one, these two really, actually these three really won't play out for a while. Okay, the fact that we don't know how many students that we're going to have accessing Norfolk Aggie, that could add up. The House and the Senate budgets, I do think they will be true to form. They will be better than the governor's budgets. However, we have a very large gap there. You probably have also caught that Governor Baker submitted a bill to speak to the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The conventional wisdom is it will be it's going to go nowhere in the legislature. However, the concern is that a lot of the finances are going to be going to the neediest communities. For example, Governor Baker's budget provides $1.1 billion to be phased in over a 7-year span, but 85% of those funds go to the poorest 15 communities across the Commonwealth. So that's not a very large sum of money to be coming to our small district. So it's a possibility that something positive could come out of the House and the Senate. However, I don't think it's a very realistic option that if you're expecting, we're going to get an infusion of 300, 400,000 starting with FY20. I just don't think that that's realistic. So I've got some very, very serious concerns at this juncture. If the gap isn't closed in some way, shape, or form through discussions with the officials on both of our communities, we're looking at fairly significant cuts to programs and to staffing. Again, we've had gaps, but this is a very, very significant one at this early stage. And as all of you know, we do this in a very early fashion. Okay, we are, I believe, to the day 6 weeks away from March 11th, which will be you certifying the FY 2020 budget. As a lot of these pieces won't be played out completely. So I think the key, and particularly in this time, early in the process, is to never lose our compass. Okay, and for me, our compass is the amazing work that has been done around our strategic plan. Okay, and I think about our mission about empowering all of our students to thrive. What does that mean? What does that mean for every child? What does that mean for every family? It's the academic piece, but it's also the social and emotional piece. So again, we may be in a situation that we have to make some difficult decisions and we have to prioritize, but I also say to the flip side of that, what is important? And what is important not only to the Mendon Upton Regional School District, but to our families, to our community. And from my perspective, there's nothing more important than continuing the health and the vitality of our school district. So, as you know, here's kind of the timeline. As it typically is, we really won't have a solid understanding of how the state budget is going to shake out until probably that May-June timeline. And it's typically been somewhere in the ballpark of July 5th to July 10th until the state budgets have been finalized. So that's kind of an overview of where we are. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Joe, I wondered if you could just explain what the consequences are for not meeting the minimum local contribution.
Great question. Outstanding question. So, for all intents and purposes, there aren't, a community could say, hey, you know what, we're going to completely level fund you. But it's kind of like that old Fram air filter commercial, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. What happens is if you are not paying the minimum local contribution, invariably what will happen is you'll fall farther behind in that target share piece. And realize the target share piece, again, to be very transparent, has been a moving target. So what will result is the following year, you'll just get socked with an MLC that's even higher. And I think it kind of speaks to a larger trend. When I started in this position 8 years ago, I don't think it was hardly a military secret that because of our limited tax base in these two communities, the budget is always a challenge. But it's also my feeling, and I'm certainly cognizant of our limited resources, and I'm certainly cognizant that this sentiment would be an anathema to some folks that live in both communities. But in order to even sustain this school district, let alone grow it and move in new positive directions, additional resources are needed. I would say in this period of every 4 to 5 years. And we're now in that window since the last override. I think you could go back and look historically of what have been the inflection points. That's essentially the way it's worked, Sean. And my fear is if we get into a situation where we're going to have to make some really, really challenging decisions about programs, staff, or services that need to be cut, it starts this process of a downward spiral. And with that downward spiral also comes a crisis of confidence. I feel very, very comfortable in saying that when I came here in 2011, unfortunately, there was a crisis of confidence in this district and within these communities. I feel like because of the remarkable staff, teachers, admin team that I'm blessed to work with, I've kind of turned that ship around. You guys, as a school committee, have turned that ship around. I'm worried that it erodes, and it erodes quickly. So I think this is a real inflection point as far as budgets. There's certain budgets, I went back and I looked at the slides from last year. At this juncture, we had a deficit of about $340,000. Was I concerned? Yes, I was. but I also knew that it was still early in the process, and there were still many things to be sorted out. But this is a fairly sizable gap.
See, that's the emotional response right there.
From me or from the
everyone.
5 of you? Okay.
But I do think it's important for us to go back and look at some of the data of what we've been given different line items. I mean, when you look at the Chapter 70 over the last essentially 4 years and what they're proposing into this year, we've essentially received an incremental 2.5% of. I mean, you go back, 2016, we were given a little above 12 million, and this year they're proposing a little under 12.5 million.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's, and I realize these components are there, and, it's clear you can see the shift, onto the towns based on the MLC and what's happening there. But I think the other item too, I think it's important for us to be clear about what's truly driving these costs higher. Whether it's health insurance, retirement costs,
Special education.
those kinds of things that are in there right now. I mean, we've had some different hits to our system in different ways. So, we got to look at what's something we have some level of control over, and we got to look at, what we don't.
Exactly.
So, because I guess, you look at that retirement impact of like 11.71%. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but we have no ability to negotiate the impact of that, correct? The retirement.
The Worcester County
retirement
assessment.
assessment.
Absolutely not. And just like,
And at the town
and realize
level,
our two, and I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, Kelly, but my understanding is both of our communities on the municipal side have gotten levied with something in the ballpark of about 10% each year.
I was going to say, I believe the number's 11% on the
Yeah.
Upton side for retirement.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely,
But I think it's the same, because we all come from the same retirement pool, so I think we're all getting hit with the same, impact of what's there, so.
yeah, retirement took a big hit.
And then the other part I think that's important to understand too is that as our student population actually grows, the funding that kind of goes with that growth is a year behind.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So,
If I could just add to what you were just saying, I just was doing the math, and FY11 to FY20, the minimum, or the Chapter 70 aid, in total, over that span of time, has gone up 1.2%. Not 1.2% per year, adding it all up. 1.2% over 4, 10, 11 years. This year it's a 0.4% increase. Last year was a 0.5% increase.
okay.
But in the very beginning, from FY11 to 12, it went down 4%. So if I take that out, then I guess it's a little bit better if I can take that out. Not just numbers. So then it's a 5% spread out over 9 years. So it's still about 1% here.
So in addition to that, just to be clear with everybody that's watching, I wonder if you could just summarize the difference between the 5.43% budget proposal that you're making and the MLC-based budget that you're proposing. What would be the difference in terms of the services for the school and the support for the students? And
Sure.
everything?
Sure. Great question again. You'd be talking about having to prioritize, realistically, right now on paper, I gave you a number of the difference being, what was it, a little over $1 million, right? 1,035,000. So say things pan out for you that, we get something more favorable with healthcare insurance. Say, you pick up a little bit of money on the state side, state aid and funding. Say you don't have students matriculating to Norfolk Aggie. you're still probably talking about a delta in the ballpark of at least $700,000. So then you have to make difficult decisions, us as a leadership team, but then you as a school committee about, well, how do you execute those cuts? You know, off the top of my head, you're probably talking about something in the ballpark of 10 to 12 FTE cuts. So then you have to prioritize, okay, what am I going to cut? Then you're thinking about, well, obviously the instructional core, who you're providing key services to, classroom teachers, that's what you want to keep intact. So I see realistically, Sean, and again, you know, I haven't gone to this place yet, but a lot of the programs and services that we gained since the 2015 override, that would be the places where you would have the recession. And then you would go back to additional user fees and so on to also get an infusion of some revenue. So again, recall, pre-override, we were charging upwards of, you know, $375 per sport and so on out of necessity. So a lot of those things that we brought back for quality of programming, you'd start to see a recession of those. And then again, it becomes something cyclical that, again, looking at the FY 2021 budget, you'd be starting from a deficit position. And then it comes down to, okay, if you're not at least meeting MLC, and again, you know, from one community giving us an additional 300,000 or whatever, then you're starting that much more in a hole. So it's challenging. It's very, very challenging. Anything else?
So just quickly, one last question. The enrollment data
Yes.
for 1920 is based off of the New England, whatever that's called?
New England Staff Development Council, NESDEC, yes.
NSDEC, okay. And then the other piece is, so it doesn't take into account the growth projections in towns?
No, the big piece that it doesn't take into account is the mobility factor.
I mean, I think it's important to understand that when we look at, 17 to 18, 18 to 19, in all of those cases, we had downward projections.
Yeah, like Jay said to me this morning, he said, you probably shouldn't be a ninny, and you probably shouldn't have a slide showing that. Realize, I had a slide last year, I happily showed to you, that showed us going down by 22 students from, and we went up by 40. Thank you, NESDEC. Like I said, this is something that I feel relative confidence in. I could say, okay, Jen, lock the door, no choice acceptances at grade 5, but if people move into the community and they've got a kid that's going into the 5th grade, she obviously has to take that. So there's always that factor. We generally don't have a very high mobility rate in these two communities. However, it has picked up within the last 2 to 3 years. Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, just one thought that's on my mind.
Yeah.
If a scenario were to happen where we find ourselves in a, you call it a deficit of confidence, then that actually creates less matriculation to NIPMOC, and it creates a bigger problem within cost for vocational schools, Norfolk Aggie, BBC.
Absolutely.
So the costs start to accumulate and go up from there. So the budget, or not the budget, the expenditure that we have per student is actually, for the community, is actually the cheapest it can be if we have them all going to NIPMOC.
Correct.
So I just want to make that point.
Good point.
Yes, we have a history there. We know what happens.
And if you look, actually, NESDEC added a page to the enrollment projection reports, which I shared with you earlier, where they actually have, I want to say, a 5 to 10 year history of BVT matriculation. And you can see within the last 3 or 4 years, it's actually gone down by a factor of about 15 to 20%. And I think that's directly attributable to the quality of the programming, the quality of the extracurriculars and so on that are here at NIMAC.
So can I ask one other question regarding transportation? I realize that we don't really have a lot of options, and I understand the different impacts on the market, but I guess my question is, I realize that also too, there are state regulations around regional schools must provide transportation to the student base and population that's out there. That's kind of one of the things that's written in there. I wonder if there's any leeway in that, if there's any ability to, where they're thinking they have the ability to maybe change the policy or improve the policy so that we have greater ability to optimize our transportation services?
So here,
What's really needed or
Well,
not?
so the rules are that you have to transport kids that are 1.5 miles or more from school. It's not just regionals, everybody has to do that. But you can charge fees, and we could charge fees, but only if we don't take our reimbursement. So even though our reimbursement's going down, it's still $1 million, we would never collect that in fees to give that up. And therefore, we do transport the kids that are within 1.5 miles because the bus is going right by them anyway. It'd be kind of like waving to them as you go by and watching them walk.
It's not the 1.5 miles I'm wondering about, it's actually the amount of kids that actually don't take the bus, whose parents either drive them, or they have other means of transportation to get to the schools, which basically, on any given morning, you can look at a bus go by,
yes.
and you can
Depends on
see
the
that
school,
those
though.
buses have, certain schools and certain timings are a lot smaller than what they are, and your point is we have to provide, as we've had this conversation before, we have to provide a seat per student
We do.
that is on that route. But if we have
Because
the
they
ability to
don't.
optimize that, does that help us?
Well, I would tell you that the middle school and elementary school buses are packed. The high school ones are the ones that are not.
Yeah.
But we pay by one bus per day, not per 3 runs. In other words, could we write a contract with them in the future that says, well, we want to only run so many buses for this route? They still have to have the buses available for the other routes, so we still have to pay for them. As
Yeah.
part of the cost of running the transportation companies, they have to go out and buy buses.
So, and then that's a cost to us that's going up by 17+%.
Well, that's the special ed piece. The regular ed piece.
Regular transportation is 5%.
The issue with the special ed piece is that they're having difficulty finding drivers. Some of these routes are, an hour away. It's just, the cost of doing that in business has gone up so much that we haven't had any increases in several years. We're finally getting hit with them. The regular ed transportation from Telstone is about 5%, I believe. It's about $75,000, $80,000.
Okay.
And they do some of our special ed transportation as well in districts, but they don't do any of the out-of-district stuff.
Yep. Okay.
But we were advised by the out-of-district transport companies to budget for 20% right now. It may not end up being that high, which would be something else that would help us, but we won't know that until July.
Okay. Lots of fun.
Only positive thing I could say is I truly believe in my heart of hearts the Patriots will win on Sunday 31-28. Okay?
No, that's too close.
Do you want me to put that in the notes?
Yes, you may.
And
That's
what
the
was
only
that-
happy news I
What was
have
that
tonight.
prediction? 21?
31-28.
28.
31. I was hoping it would be high because I can't take the stress.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business out here we need to discuss? Okay, hearing none, we move on to new business and MISCO Beautification Committee. Diane, you have an update for us?
So, okay, so here's happy, right?
Yes. Mhm.
I've been working with a group of about 10 to 15 parents, along with Amy Benina, who's a mom at the middle school. And we've been meeting with Jen Mannion to try to walk the school and identify some areas that aren't necessarily capital costs, but it's kind of, I think Joe refers to it as low-hanging fruit, some improvements that we can make in the school with a little bit of, labor efforts, maybe some skills, some painting, some carpentry, things that we can kind of coordinate within the parent community. And Jen has been working with the student community. We're hoping to bring in students from Nipmuc, students from Memorial and Clough to try to participate in a little beautification effort at MISCO. MISCO was built in about 1960. It was expanded and renovated in the 80s. I can't quote exactly when, but in the 80s to go from being a high school, and I believe it became an elementary school. So many of the renovations reflect that. It's very little kid-centered. But in general, year to year, our budget efforts are more towards staff and quality of education towards students and not necessarily facilities. So MISCO is definitely in need of some TLC. And it has been one of my passions, having been at MISCO for probably 9 or 10 years now, to get a group of parents interested in this type of effort. And I'm very lucky that Amy Benina has stepped up with me to kind of coordinate this effort. She used to be a facilities manager at Harvard University, so this is kind of her wheelhouse. And I think we're going to start picking up some steam so we can start chipping away at some of these projects. And Jen Mannion, we're actually meeting with her tomorrow morning. We've got about a 4 to 5 page list of improvements that we feel we could kind of do with, just grunt work and a paintbrush and children's creativity, students' creativity at all different levels. And the list is lengthy, but we're prioritizing. So we're going to try to tackle 2 projects at a time. We're hoping to get started on some of that work as early as February, and definitely during February break. We're going to obviously be coordinating with facilities at MISCO as well. There's some of this work that they'll be able to do. But we are going to be reaching out to not only our MERSD community, parents, staff of MERSD, and our students, but Amy and I are going to try to reach out to the community, to the larger community, to Girl Scouts, to Boy Scouts, Upton Men's Club, the different organizations in our community that maybe would be able to provide us with either donations of goods. We just, a parent just reached out to me about a month and a half ago. The office place that she worked at had 2 beautiful conference tables that they were getting rid of and about 20 chairs. And they were green, go figure. So we happily accepted that donation. So looking into the community, into businesses for some donations like this. So we're hopeful that part of the reason why I feel so strongly about this project is because I think it's really important to feel pride and ownership and agency in the place that you work. And because MISCO hasn't received probably the TLC that she deserves, because she's got good bones, I think that does have an effect, and I really want our teachers and our students to feel really proud of the place that they come to work and learn every day. So we're very hopeful that this will be a good coordinated collaborative effort. So, and we have been meeting every 2 to 3 weeks. We're kind of at a little standstill right now because we can't really get started until we have, our labor and our donations lined up. So that's the next step of the process. And we welcome anybody's help who's listening out there. You can contact me at tduncan@mersd.org.
Any questions? All right. Moving on. Correspondence. In your packet, you should have previewed the letter to the Knowlton School Trust Fund, a letter that we'll be sending as a committee to request funds from the trust to support the upgrade of the playground at Memorial. Is there anything else I'm forgetting, Joe?
No. Hats off to Jay, who's been pretty vigilant in kind of seeking additional funding and partnerships. He reached out to the Upton Town Manager and also the Treasurer, and kind of looking to replace that rubber surfacing. We recently, within the last couple of years, did it at Clough, which has been wonderful. We desperately need it at Memorial as well, because it obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, it's the original
Yes.
rubber
Yep.
surfacing from when the schools were built in
Yeah, and it's
'03.
got rips and
And it
tears.
becomes, with little kids running around, it becomes a real safety concern. So our hope is, and ironically enough, I think we have in your packet the actual will,
That was great.
and I think it's from like 1909 or
That was
something.
really neat.
Yeah, and this is a little-known trust fund from this will, and hopefully it can be fruitful in providing some funding for this position. So we'll keep you posted based upon this correspondence. Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Okay, other matters not anticipated by this committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting? Okay, hearing none. Future agenda items include the MERSD homework guidelines update on February 11th and FY 2020 open budget hearing on March 11th in the Nitlock Auditorium. Okay, anything else? All right, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The meeting is adjourned at 8:34. Thank you.